Thank you. Everyone can stand. Lift your right hand over your heart. And repeat after me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All of you, I appreciate the service.
And the entire board for all the meetings. It's great to be here at Marion in person. Thank you for keeping this treasure of Westwood alive and thriving. Greatly appreciated. It's a wonderful cafe for the community. It's also where my favorite cheeseburgers are served. And so I appreciate being able to come here once in a while and do that. It's also a great honor to be here with my friend Fiona Ma, our incredible state treasurer. And it's needless to say, been a crazy last year. So no one would have ever imagined what we would be facing in the last year plus. In January of 2020, I did a motion at council to say there's rumors about this little virus. We probably should check into it and figure out how much of a threat this is. And hopefully that motion helped us get off to at least a reasonable start in dealing with it. I also did a motion to look at, if we needed to, how we could prepare for working remotely. Both of those motions seemed pretty psychic in retrospect. When we actually heard and discussed that motion was beginning of March, and we were almost immediately ending council meetings, doing everything remotely, and going through something that I don't think anyone ever would have dreamed in terms of impact on people's lives and our economy and our businesses. Sadly, I didn't go out much for a year or so. Once I did start going out again, I realized that a lot of my favorite restaurants throughout the city had closed down, which is really devastating. Fortunately, there are two here on Westwood Boulevard that are still going, and we all appreciate that. I also was the one that did the motion back, I think, in March to ask that people start wearing masks and to make that mandatory. I couldn't get the council to take immediate action on it, but I talked the mayor into it and the county health department, so we did that, I think, back in April, which I think helped us a great deal in avoiding more health impacts that we would have had otherwise before we had vaccines and other things to help us. I think it's still vital for us to use masking when we can. It's still one of the best tools if you read the science, along with vaccines, since vaccines aren't quite as perfect as we had hoped originally, although they still almost guarantee your life if you take them, even if you do contract a breakthrough illness. But masking combined with that almost guarantees your safety. So I certainly encourage everyone to continue doing that. I I've also taken a lot of steps to help our struggling constituents and struggling businesses. I introduced legislation to aid small business in rebuilding, and also recovering from one of the many other things that hit us, the unrest that we had after George Floyd's terrible death. It really hit right in the heart of my district, in the Fairfax area. And after the first few hours of it, I pushed really hard. We got the National Guard in. We got the LAPD to be more strategic. And after that first night, we actually worked very closely with LAPD and strategized and kept the areas that we expected to be attacked from seeing any harm. So we particularly planned out how to defend Westwood Village and Westwood Boulevard, and that worked out well. We planned how to defend Century City Mall. We actually had National Guard and LAPD at every entrance, and we hit a point where 30 cars descended on Century City Mall, full of people there to vandalize, and we were well prepared to turn the mall down. Shortly after that, I was surprised to see an effort to eliminate the LAPD and eliminate law enforcement. And I was one of the few council members strongly opposed cutting the LAPD, much less what many people were calling for, which was their complete elimination. I was the only council member that voted against referring the idea of a $150 million cut to LAPD to a council committee for consideration. Mostly ever since, I've even used much of my very limited discretionary funds to help to fund overtime in each of the 4 bureaus that represent part of Council District 5. So I continue to try to do whatever we can in that front. I think keeping violent crime under control is certainly critical for quality of life, but it's also critical in terms of making the business community more desirable as well. There's also a motion that I put in recently. I don't know how many of you are aware of ghost guns, but they're basically guns that are put together from a kit with parts. So they are able to be sold to people that are not allowed to have guns. They bypass background checks. They have no ID numbers on them, so they're impossible to trace. And LAPD has found that about a third of the guns they confiscate in crimes are now ghost guns. So no one regulates them anywhere, so hopefully LA City will begin regulating them shortly, and hopefully that will cut into what's been an increase in violent crime that we've faced here in LA. Also, homelessness is probably our biggest current crisis, and probably will be for a number of years. There are a lot of things that the council and I are trying to do. It's the hardest in my district because my district is probably the only one where property values are really high. There's virtually no open space to put anything, and any space that there is open to develop is usually owned by developers who want to build something for profit. So it's been very difficult for me. I have one bridge home, and I may get a second one on Melrose. We have 2 HHH projects in the works. The one just broke ground on Santa Monica Boulevard, and other ones on Brea. The Santa Monica Boulevard one is an example of how you can spend less on HHH projects, which have run very high because development costs have come through the roof. We use prefabrication, and that actually makes it a lot easier to construct, and it wound up making it a lot cheaper, and yet probably the best designed project that we've seen so far in HHH has. So we're doing what we can. There's also one thing I've been pushing for, and not yet with tremendous success, which is more focus on family reunification rather than just building super expensive housing. The least expensive, quickest, and most humane thing you can do is talk to homeless people identify whether they'd be willing to live with a family member, get information on those family members, contact them and see if they'd be willing to accept them, pay for any transportation that's necessary, and do the follow-up virtually, no matter where they are, whether it's in LA or Pomona or in Detroit, doing the follow-up counseling to make sure they don't fall out of the housing. And that's been a very successful model, but it's hit and miss. We have hundreds of different nonprofits that do this outreach work in LA, and every one of them does it differently. So the most successful ones have placed a quarter of their placements through this method, like family reunification, which means a quarter of them didn't cost $500,000 for permanent supportive housing, and many tens of thousands of dollars for supportive services, and got them back in a family environment rather than maybe being a lonely person in an HHH. So I think we should put all the resources that we can into that step first. I haven't really talked to my colleagues about taking that approach yet, but that's one of my goals. So one of the main things I'm here for is I wanted to present certificates to the members of this board that helped to keep the business community going during the pandemic, did all the good work necessary, helped to, in some cases, to feed our senior citizens, who otherwise, many of whom couldn't gain access to meals, and all the other good things we've done to keep as many businesses as we have afloat in West LA, and for all your good volunteer work out there. I know some of you said, but it's probably true for most or all of you, that in some ways this has been your business, and your real business has been your hobby. And we all appreciate that good work. So if I could take a minute and present the certificates that we have for some of the folks here. And I apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name. So there.
You can ask Tanner.
Now, as I'm talking about people whose names I can't pronounce, first, Chris Gray. There's an easy one.
There's a start easy. He's gonna do it.
Thanks so much.
I want to take
I think I can do this
the
one
flag.
too. Bruce for a hoverboard.
Where do you want them to move?
So could you please take that because
Do you want the flag?
Oh. Thank you for everything. Nima Mobasser. Assuming I got that perfectly right.
Yes, I did. You did.
Steve Lipstick.
You sure are.
You're not being easy. Dr. William Manos.
Pay attention.
Getting pointers from Chris here.
Sorry.
Person Engine. Elham Yagobian.
I feel sorry for you.
If I fouled that up in any way, my apologies.
Yeah.
It's calm here.
Yeah, I was trying to Cyrus about it.
Thank you.
That was basic training and then she came out and that stuff.
Yeah. Arash Hashimi.
Yeah.
It's like a long walk.
One more time.